Bruchim Habaim. We're in Parsha Nitzavim, which begins in Devarim, the book of Devarim, chapter 29, verse 9. And I have a few books open here, just doing a little study. I thought I'd share with you guys. Anyways, in Nitzavim, I have the Ramban Nachmanides in front of me, the Ben Ishchai, and the Midrash. It says some interesting stuff here, but the Parsha begins with Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulachem Lifnei Hashem Elahechem. So it says, you are standing today, all of you, before Hashem. And the Ben Ishchai, he actually asks, why is this pasuk directly next to Parsha Ki Savo, which ended in Devarim 29, verse 8, where it says here, in 29, verse 8, you shall observe the words of this covenant, you shall perform them so that you will succeed in all that you do. Okay, Ushmartem es divrei habris hazos v'yasisem osam lama'an taskilu es cho asher ta'asun. Okay, and the next parsha, this parsha, Nitzavim, started with Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulachem Lifnei Hashem Elahechem. You are all standing this day before Hashem your God. And Chazal told us on Rosh Hashanah that Israel is judged during the day, Hayom, but all the nations are judged during the night. And basically, this holy day, Rosh Hashanah, is not just for the Jewish people, but for the whole entire world, whether they realize it or not. They are all being judged. And Chazal tell us, why is Israel judged during the day and the nations are judged at night? So the reason for the different times can be understood from a parable of a king who asked the citizens of a town to come to him and discuss their issues. Each of the poor people of the town took a couple of loaves of bread and went to meet the king. And since there was nothing to delay them, they became the head of the convoy, similar to a donkey that was not carrying a load. On the other hand, the rich people wanted to prepare provisions for the trip and appropriate gifts to the king, since it was not proper to appear before the king empty-handed, and hence they were delayed more than the poor people. The same applies to Israel, who were wise and understanding people and know how to satisfy the wishes of Hashem and provide gifts before him in the form of prayers that were ordained by Chazal, a blessed memory, and which include the blowing of the shofar to provide tikkun, spiritual repair, of many alamos, and hence Hashem, HaKodesh Baruch Hu, waits for them and judges them during the day so that they can have time to prepare their gifts. The other nations of the world were likened to animals which lack any special knowledge, and hence there would be no reason to delay them to the day, and they are judged during the night of Rosh Hashanah. We know that even nighttime represents more of a time of harsh decree judgment, and so this is in the last pasuk of Ki Tavo. We're told, Ushmartem es divrei habris hazos v'asisem osam lema'an taskilu es kol asher ta'asun, to mean that they should have intelligence and knowledge to know how to please Hashem their God by their good deeds and behavior. And since they are all educated in this pasuk, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulechem Lifnei Hashem Elahechem, the pasuk specifically stated Hayom to mean that Hashem will judge Israel during the day and not at night like all the other nations. And Hayom is, the sages also say that there's a connection with the word Hayom with Rosh Hashanah. And similarly, the rabbis stated in Yerushalayim Masechet Rosh Hashanah 1:3 regarding the book of Job, in chapter 2, verse 1, it says, Vayhi hayom vayavohu b'nei ha'elohim lahitzatzev al Hashem. Now on that day, on a day that the angels of God came to stand beside Hashem, and we're told in the Zohar, in Shemot 32b and 33a, that this day is the day of judgment. So even as it says Nitzavim, we are all standing, and this is standing at attention. There's other words for standing in the Hebrew, but this one is specifically, we're all standing today. As it starts with this verse in chapter 29, verse 9 in Devarim, it mentions the heads of the tribes, your elders, the officers, all the men of Israel, your small children, the women, the proselyte. It goes to every member of Klal Israel that this is for everyone standing today. And just as we are standing on Rosh Hashanah before the king, so are the angels above. And so another explanation for Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulachem, followed what Chazal tell us in Masechet Rosh Hashanah 16b, that the three books opened on Rosh Hashanah, Shel Zedekim, Benonim, Rashiim. And this is the righteous who and those who were in between, the Benoni, and the evildoers, the Rashiim. And so what's interesting about these three words, Zedekim, Benoni, and Rasha, the first letters of these three words is Zibur, which means public. So the whole entire public, the Kehila, the community, is standing before Hashem. This is a holy day for everyone. And the righteous are inscribed and sealed for life immediately. The in-between are left hanging until the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to see if they will make teshuvah. And you see, this also reminds me of a verse in the book of Revelation, which also has three books that are being opened in Revelation, whether you know it or not. There is the book of the life and the book of death, and there's an even small book if you look if you know Revelation really well. And not only that, I think it's in Revelation chapter 2 verse 10. I could be wrong because I don't even have the Brit Hadashah in front of me, but it says that some will be thrown into prison and will be tested for 10 days. These 10 days are from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. That is the understanding. And the evildoers have to wait until Yom Kippur. Thus, the inscription that is carried out are three types: initial, middle, and at the end. And there are 22 letters in the Torah and 5 final letters, sofit, and for a total of 27 letters, with the aleph at the beginning, the mem in the middle, and the tav at the end, forming the word emes, which is truth. To signify the first, middle, and last groups are inscribed, and this is a remiss to the 3 levels of Nitzavim Hayom Kulechem, to mean that on Rosh Hashanah Lifnei Hashem Alahechem, in addition, Atem, when it says Atem Nitzavim, you were standing, you can rearrange the letters of Atem, which actually spell emes, which is truth. And on the day of judgment, when we are standing before Hashem, we are going to be standing in truth. We are going to be judging. We will not be able to lie, that Hashem knows all of the secrets before us. And going on in the Parsha, even it says here in chapter 29, verse 10, or verse 11, let's see here, it says, or verse 14, as Hashem speaks of this renewed covenant here. And in verse 14 it says, 13, not with you alone do I seal this covenant and this imprecation, but with whoever is here standing with us today before Hashem our God, and with whoever is not here today. And what does this mean? This means that these commandments, this Torah, is still in effect even for those that were in the day of Moshe Rabbeinu, and also carrying on the forever, that the Torah is not annulled, the commandments still stand, that whoever is not, this is talking about the future, and this completely gets rid of replacement theology to say that the Torah is done away with or anything. Here is the proof that the Torah still stands even today. And going on in Nitzavim chapter 30, Perek Lamed, verse 11, it says here that it says, for this commandment that I command you today, ha-mitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavcha hayom, it says, for this commandment that I command you today, it is not hidden from you, it is not distant. And the Ramban Nachmanides really begins to explain that this, first he says, he says something along the lines of what Rashi says, the meaning of for this commandment, that it's a reference to the entire Torah, that for this commandment I command you today. He says this is got to do with the whole entire Torah, the reference of the Torah. This is kind of what Rashi says, but Ramban really comes with more of an explanation and says this is a reference to all the commandments of the Torah, which would say something, all the commandments that I command you today. If it were to say, really represent all of the Torah, it would say all the commandments that I command you today, as it does in actually chapter 8 of Devarim, verse 1. He gives an example here in Devarim chapter 8, verse 1, where it says, the entire commandment, Chol ha-mitzvah asher anochi mitzavcha hayom. But here, Ramban Nachmanides says that this expression, this commandment, would indicate a specific commandment, and thus here refers to teshuvah. He says that this is a mitzvah for teshuvah. For it says, for then you will take it to your heart. He goes back to the beginning of chapter 30, verse 1 here. It says, it will be that when all these things come upon you, the blessing and the curse that I have presented before you, then you will take it to your heart, and all the nations where Hashem your God has dispersed you, and you will return veshavta ad Hashem Elohecha. So he says that the whole context from the beginning of this chapter has got to do with teshuvah, and you will return. And so it says that we must do teshuvah, and that we will do teshuvah, and this will bring the coming of Mashiach. And he says this is a mitzvah. Now the Rambam Maimonides says in Hilchos Teshuvah that this refers to a verbal confession. It's not really the teshuvah. He says that and there's a bit of machlokas with the sages here and everything, but the confession constitutes the fulfillment of the mitzvah and not teshuvah. So the Ramban Nachmanides really says this: the mitzvah is teshuvah, but either way, this is all got to do with teshuvah and returning to Hashem. And so as we're about to approach the holy day of Rosh Hashanah, may we just eternalize this a bit more and do teshuvah. And one more thing that it says here, that in verse, let's see here, it talks about that the Torah, it says in verse 11 here, for this commandment I have commanded you today. It is not hidden from you, and it is not distant. It is not in heaven for you to say, who can ascend for heaven? And so the Parsha tells us that the Torah is not distant from us. And this has also got to do with, the Midrash goes into something. I've been in arguments about how can the sages, the Sanhedrin, have the authority of halakha. And this is, the Midrash even says that this is for the sages on earth. Well, here's a little bit of a story the Midrash goes into. It says the words, the Torah is not in heaven, moreover imply that God does not make Torah decisions in heaven. Rather, he gave the power to judge the matters of halakha to the sages on earth. And ultimately, an ultimate decision must reflect the opinion of the majority of the Sanhedrin. Okay? And there's a story going on here. It says a little bit of a midrashic story that the sages say, even in the Talmud. It says a dispute arose among the sages whether or not a certain type of oven could become tameh, impure. R. Eliezer says, perhaps the most outstanding sage of the generation declared that the oven in question was pure, while the other sages considered it impure. R. Eliezer presented arguments to support his view, but the sages who were the majority would not accept them. If the halakha is as I teach, exclaimed R. Eliezer, may the carob tree here in the yard confirm it. A miracle transpired whereby the carob tree moved 100 amos forward, and some say 400 amos. And the sages said, the chacham, they say, we do not accept proof from a carob tree. And they protested. And God has fulfilled the Zadik's decree to change the laws of nature, but your halakha decision is nevertheless wrong. So there is a concept that the Zedekim, the Zadiks of the generation, could even manipulate weather. And this is not even a new concept that Yeshua in the Brit Hadashah walked on water. And this is nothing new, that the sages could manipulate weather as well. But the sages go on. Our Eliezer said, if the halakha is as I teach, let the brook demonstrate it, proclaimed our Eliezer. And at that time, the brook began to flow backwards. And the sages protested, don't bring proof from the brooks. If I am right, insisted our Eliezer, let the walls of the base Hamidrash prove it. And as the walls began to cave in, our Yehoshua called out, what business do you have with a halakhic dispute among the Torah scholars? Immediately the walls stopped following. In our Yehoshua's honor, they did not collapse, but in our Eliezer's honor, they did not return to the original upright position either. Rather, they remained crooked. Finally, our Eliezer proclaimed, if I am right, let heaven prove it. A heavenly voice, a bat kol, was heard, and the halakha is always as our Eliezer teaches. This voice from heaven said, and our Yehoshua arose and declared, we are bidden by the Torah not to heed a heavenly voice in halakhic matters. The Torah is no longer heaven, but is established by the majority of the sages on earth. As it says in Shemos 23:2, you should incline after a majority. Later, one of the sages of our Nasan had a revelation of the prophet Eliyahu. And he said, so basically this story goes on, but basically I've had arguments saying, well, you see, the sages are corrupt, or see, our Eliezer heard the voice from heaven and he is right, so Hashem determines the halakha, or what we're supposed to do. We can't listen to the rabbis, and this is nonsense, because the rabbis even put this story in the Talmud. They did not hide this story, but it's to show that one could do miracles. Even a prophet can proclaim and do miracles and all of these things. It doesn't mean, I mean, if these miracles of this prophet decides to prophesy something and it does not come true, it's false, even though he did all these miracles. And even though one sage heard a voice from heaven, and perhaps maybe this was a right opinion, but we have to listen to the sages. They are the ones that rule, and this was given by Hashem, that authority was bound on earth. Yeshua says these even the same words, that whatever is bound on earth is bound in heaven. So if the sages were really trying to hide or be corrupt, why would they even put the story in the Gemara anyway? And not only that, even the Torah tells us, even if the rabbis say left is right and right is left, we still follow them, because the thing was that even our Akiva went to talk to our Eliezer, and even said, he even cried, but he said that we have to go with the sages, otherwise this could cause division. That's how you have all these crazy denominations. You have like these groups that are against the rabbis, the Hebrew Israelites, Messianics, a lot of Messianics, and sacred namers, and all these things that go against the rabbis but have no real understanding. And then they try to claim, well, we're under the halakha of Yeshua, but where is the halakha? Yeshua didn't even put a code of law out there. He says whatever is bound on earth is bound in heaven, and right now we listen to the authority which goes back to the Sanhedrin. Anyways, I'm just talking a lot here, but I hope you enjoyed the study, what I had to share. And may you all be inscribed in the book of life. Have a great holy day, a great Shabbat, a great holy day of Rosh Hashanah. May you all be inscribed in the book of life. Do well through the 10 days and Yom Kippur. And may we continue to just do better, work on our character traits, and glorify Hashem.